So I'm going to show you how to sew and how to create these bows. This one, for example, it's done with a simple cotton. It wasn't reinforced, and this cotton is a lightweight type of cotton. This was done in the way where you manipulate one continuous long piece of fabric. So you really need just one a piece of fabric. I'll be giving you the measurements and the added flap you put in the middle here to create the bow, to create the form, the shape, and that's about it. The advantage of this type of a bow is that you can easily adjust the tails of the bow, and I'll be showing you how to do it in the video. And even this the bow itself here, these parts here. Then we have this type of bow here, and this wasn't done with one continuous piece of material. Here I needed two pieces of material. Now this one is stiffer. When you hang it, for example, you can hang it with a string or twine or ribbon, whatever. This remains pretty stiff. And this is a stiff bow because what I did was onto the cotton fabric, I ironed some fusible interfacing. So here we need 1, 2, and one for the piece for the flap. So basically 2 larger pieces of fabric. This is the back here. Now this also you can easily adjust the tails, because remember the tails, it's this part here. So you can easily adjust them. Sometimes it depends on the look you're going for. You may want one part of it longer than the other. Here they're both even. So this is also another way of doing this bow with fabric. Now this is more or less the bow that you use the continuous piece of fabric, or just one long piece, and you manipulate it. It's a checkered pattern here, and then there is a solid color red, solid red here. So this, if you look carefully, it's like this. So here you have 2 different looks. You have this look with the checkered and the red tails, and here you have the checkered, all checkered. Okay, with checkered tails. I'm going to show you now how it's hung on a door, and then we'll start looking at how we construct these bows. Now this is an example of the bow hung on a door. And you can use these bows to brighten up any corner of your room. You can use them in the exterior and interior, in the interior and exterior. And here again, you can use different types of fabrics instead of ironing fusible interfacing onto materials to get them stiff. If you have already a stiffer type of fabric, you can save all that work. But I will show you how to iron on the interfacing in case you need, in case your fabric is really light, very light, and you need it a bit stiffer. Now, this is a tablecloth I had, and I'm going to be using it to cut a panel, piece of my material for the making the bow. And I'm using this because this is a stiffer type of material. So I'm wanted to show you, if you just use a stiffer type of material, what how the bow can come out. And then of course I'll show you how to iron on the fusible interfacing onto lighter types of materials. So the important thing is that you need to iron properly, iron the material properly. So I'm going to iron this material, and I'm going to just cut out exactly what I need. So I have ironed a certain section of this really large tablecloth, the cotton tablecloth. And for the measurements, I need like 136 centimeters by 66. 136 centimeters by 66. They're really the size of the bows that previously shown. And so with this really large piece of material, what I want to do is I'm going to just sort of fold it in half here. So I need 136 by 66. So what I'm going to concentrate on, because with the big large pieces of material you can get really easily confused. So this part that I've ironed here, I'm going to measure 66 centimeters, okay, 66 centimeters vertically, and make sure that it's correct. I measured from one end and measured on the to the other end also. So we're gonna do that. So the 68 from here to here, so I've measured, and here are the markings. Now I'm going to draw a line all the way down and then cut. So now that I've cut here, this side here, I'm going to take away my pins. And what I'm going to do now, you see that it's lengthwise, okay? Lengthwise. Now, lengthwise, what you do now, you fold it in half. You do like this. Fold it in half like this. Always lengthwise. And make sure you get a really good half here. Perfect half. And what you do is you have to pin it. So So you make sure it's nice and flat and then you pin it. Okay. Make sure the edges, they meet. You can always iron and re-iron and as much as you want to. So I'm going to pin it, put some pins to stabilize this, to just keep everything in place. Now, with this pinned, what we do is we remember that the folded edge has to be at the top. That's very important. What we have to do now, we take the edge of this and we, here at the bottom, we measure out about, I would say 12 centimeters. And we mark it, because what we're going to do is here from the top we're going to draw a line from here to here. So we do that, and we're going to do this on the other side too. 12 centimeters. We mark it and we draw this. Oh, okay, let's draw that better. Okay, that's better. So now what we're going to do, make sure that this is all pinned, this area here and the other area too. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to pin them, because what we're going to do now is we're going to cut along this line and cut along the other line too. Okay, and now we do the same for the other. Now everything's been cut, and what I want to do now, I want to find the middle of this. So I'm going to fold it like this, and the middle is right here. So here I'm going to mark it on any side. Okay, with you what the middle. Okay, so now what you do is you unfold it, and we know. So in the middle here, what we can do is we need the middle, because we want to leave an opening in the middle. So what we're going to do is this. We're going to sew along the edge here, and then we come up to a certain part, and then we leave about, I would say, 6 or 7 centimeters in the middle, and then we continue sewing along the other edge. So you sew along the edge, the only opening you leave here, it's going to be the center. And the reason you do this is because you're going to want to turn this inside out. Okay, this whole panel, you're going to turn it inside out. So let's start checking here. The middle is here, and we can, let's see, we can even leave more if you want, so that you don't have too many problems turning it inside out. So look, we're gonna leave about even, look, 5 on one side and 5 on the other side. That's pretty big. So not necessarily 6, but 5 and 5. You won't have too many problems because this material is, even though it's sort of a rigid, it's not like really stiff. So if you leave this, you need to now pin in a proper way. For example, this is the way I pin. And I pin it in this way because it needs to remind me that I shouldn't sew this closed. So you pin like this, you do one and you do the other. You sort of a crisscross pin like that. And over here, I'm going to do the same. I'm going to pin in this way. And this just, tells me, look, you don't close it up. So here, I am going to take this to my sewing machine and I'm going to go along the edges, stop here, start here, and go along the edge. Now, there are some things I have to say. You may not have a sewing machine, and then you'll be like, what do I do? If you have a needle and a thread, you can do a sort of a chain stitch all around. No problem. I know it's gonna take longer, but if that's the only option, we can do that. You may not even have a needle and a thread, and you're like, then what do I do? Sometimes I know that fabric glue can be used to fasten edges or glue edges together. So that can be an option too, depending on the situation. Because you may want to do this and say, oh, look, there are some things I really don't have. I don't have a sewing machine with me. What am I going to do? But I do have the fabric, and the fabric, I have my ironing board, everything else, but sewing machine. So these can be some ways to do it. I don't know. I don't suggest unless, because the important thing is fastening these edges in one way or the other. So I have the sewing machine and I'm going to sew these. So that's the easiest way. But sometimes you have to improvise because you may be in a situation where, you're going to be missing certain things. So I'm going to go to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew along the edges, but I'll show you how I do it. So we're going to begin sewing, and I'm going to start from this edge. So what you do is you put the pressure foot here, you lower the pressure foot, and it wants to meet the edge of the material. So for those who sew, you start sewing and you're going to go back a bit to close the stitch. You back stitch to close it, and you proceed. Let's check to see how things are going. Okay, so far so good. When you get to the edge here, what you could do is you could just lift the presser foot and you turn. Okay. Okay, let's see. Yes. And you continue, always keeping it to the edge. My edges are not the best. It wasn't really lined up properly, but okay. So you continue like this. Now we get to our point here where we have to back stitch. We close off the stitch because we don't want to go all the way across. So what we want to do is remove our pins and go forward a bit, backward a bit. Okay, so we've closed that and that's it. Now we go forward here. From here on we can stitch. Here now it's left open. So we go forward, we lift our presser foot. Here I'm going to get rid of these two pins, lower the presser foot, back stitch, and go ahead. Okay, I'm going to lift the presser foot. We're almost there. Lower the presser foot. There I go again. And we back stitch to finish. Now we're going to take it to to show you how it looks. So now we want to turn this inside out. So do you see the middle here? So there is just a question of turning inside out, slowly but surely. Okay, we're almost there. So here we're almost there. Okay. Now, what we want to do now is we want to sort of turn out these corners, and we're going to do that with the help of these sticks. It's blunt here. The end is blunt, and it's better because you don't want it to go through the material. So here I'm going to find the center again. I'm going to go in with the stick, go in with my hand, and let's see. So we're going to, you see, turn them out like this. Okay. Without going through. We're going to go here and we're going to do the same. Okay, this is better. And then we go to the other side and we do the same. Okay, this part here. Okay, this is good. And last one is this one. And that's it. So now they're turned out. What we want to do now is we'd like to take this back to our ironing board and just, you know, iron it a little, because we've really manipulated this material. So there can be creases we may not like. Okay, so we can go to our ironing board and iron it. We can iron it in a certain way. Make sure that these seams are really in the middle, like this, when you iron. So sort of try to iron it properly. And then I'll tell you exactly what you can. So I'm going to start ironing this. And you want to iron it. You can even use the cornstarch or any other product to make things look as stiff as possible. Here I'm going to just place the iron over here, because here I would like to sort of pull out the seam, pull it out like that, because I want the seam to be right in the center, right in the middle. Okay, I've pulled it out a bit here, so I'll do like this. And it's maybe you think it's a very maybe it's unnecessary, but I'll show you why it could be very necessary. Okay, so you make sure it's in the middle here. Show in the middle here. Okay. Okay, and you go along here the edge. When you get now to the middle part here, this part, you want to do the same. And I'll show you why. Make sure that everything falls in the center. Okay? So you the sides that are sewn, that they can sort of help you. Okay. The seam allowance, make sure more or less it's the same. It's not sewn, but you can sort of you can judge, you can average. Let's see, like this and like this, more or less, because the seam allowance, it's like like half a centimeter, so you sort of average that out, or you measure it if you're not certain. So like this. See this one. Okay, like that. Okay, more or less like this. You keep it flat. If you have any problems keeping it flat, you pin it, no problem. But just to show you that this, you steam it a little bit here. Okay. And you continue just like this along the edges, The edges, of course, where it's sewn, because where it's not sewn, it's easy, it's flat, it's just folded, no problem. Now that you've ironed all around and everything looks the way it should, we need to close up this middle. Now, there are a couple things you can do. You can stitch again just half of a centimeter from the edge, like the way I had stitched. You've seen me just putting the presser foot down and just going all around. Now, in doing so, you then automatically close up this middle. And you go, and what you'll have a just a stitch, decorative. It could be decorative because you can even use another color thread. You could use even decorative stitches depending on what type of sewing machine you have. And you can just go all the way around, no problems. You can even use trim. I mean, you can do many things. And there you solve that problem. Okay, if you don't want to use that option, what you can do is you can use fabric glue. So you can be, okay, I had to turn it inside out, but now I don't really feel like, I don't want to stitch all the way around, and I'm gonna just use some fabric glue. Or what you can do is you can hand stitch it. Okay, you hand stitch it in a way that you do not see the stitches on the outer side of the fabric. So you have to do this in a very neat way. So I'm going to show you how to hand stitch it, because you may decide, oh no, I don't want to stitch, go all around and stitch. Maybe I prefer hand stitching it, and that's it. So I'll show you this in a minute. So with the double threaded needle, we can do some sort of invisible stitching. So we're going to pick up a little bit of material from here, but make sure the needle doesn't enter here, okay, on this side, on the right side, because we don't want to see the thread on the right side, the thread color. You pick up another little bit, a little piece of material here from the opposite end here. Okay, then you do the same thing here, about a few millimeters from the other one. Okay, and then you go again and you do the same thing here. Get the thread out of the way. It's a little piece of thread. In the meanwhile, always check in to see that there is nothing, no thread over here. And then you go again. This time the opposite side. And what you do is you continue like this until you really close it up. So this is one of the ways. Now what I'm going to do is, okay, so far I've hand stitched up to this area here, and what you would want to do is you go and you iron it, and if you decide not to put a stitch all the way around. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a stitch all the way around just to show you how that can look. So I'm going to ignore this. If you want to do, you can, no problem, and without putting stitches all the way around, but I'm going to do one and then we'll see how it looks. I have stitched a few centimeters from the edge all the way around, and what you will notice is that it becomes more crisp, okay? It becomes more, the material becomes more structured. So if you want this extra, that's, you know, you can just proceed to do this. So it's much more structured. Now here's what, let's go make the middle flap for this bow. So let's take from the center, this is the center, about 6 or 7 centimeters, okay, to the right, and 6 or 7 to the left. Let's say 7 centimeters, about 7 centimeters, it's here, and from the middle, and 7 centimeters here from the middle. Here you can mark it with thread or chalk, but make sure you do mark it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take the flaps here, this one and the other one, and we're going to cross them. But we're going to cross them at that point. Okay, so this is the 7 centimeters, 7 centimeter point, and this is the other 7 centimeter point. But in crossing, be careful because you want this, because these at the ending are going to be the tails. So you want these to be flat, not curl up as the way it is like this. So you may have to adjust it a little bit. So yes, more or less. Okay, so let's note where the center is. Okay, let's go again. Okay, center is here, 6, 7. We cross again, and we cross again. Sometimes you have to adjust, but just try to make things a bit equal on top here, because then you'll have a better outcome, better results. So these are the tails, and make sure that you can distinguish them. Now what you need to do is you need to start scrunching from the top. So we can start here scrunching, and here we can start scrunching this one here too, and then we could start scrunching here. And what already we're trying to form the bow. So you scrunch up until you have these tails here, and you have the main part of the bow here. And of course you'll note that because it's like was crisscrossed, one part of the tail sort of remains in the back and the one to the front, but it's very easy to even things out. So now what we have to do is we have to make the middle flap to tie this, to tighten this. But before we do this, what we can do is we can take either a ribbon or a strong piece of thread, and to help you anchor it is, so we're going to take our strong thread, and what we can do is we can just wrap it around and tie it. We can measure the length of the flap by taking the measuring tape and going all around. We go around like this because you want to know the length of the piece that we have to put here. So the length could be about, let's say, 17 centimeters, and the width here, the width could be about 5 or 6. So about like 17 by 5 or 6 centimeters. So there we cut out our piece for the flap, and here I'm going to measure this. I think this it's about okay, this is quite long here. This is about 22 by 16, which is quite long. We said about, but we do have to consider that when we wrap it around in a certain way, we need to take it to the sewing machine to sew. and then we have to flip it over. So we have to take this into consideration. So I would say, let's see. Okay, with some seam allowance, and we can reduce this, reduce the width. We can reduce the width a bit. I think we'd be able to, I think this would be able to fit. So, okay, I'm going to reduce it. We're going to take this and we're going to turn it here like this. We're going to fold it rather. And we're going to sew right along this here, 1 centimeter seam allowance. So after sewing this, now we're going to turn it inside out. Now we've turned it inside out, and this, what we're going to do is the seam, we need our seam to be in the middle. So you can take it to the ironing board and you can press this flat. Okay? Now what we do with this is we're going to take the bow, and with the seam facing upwards, we wrap it around like this. We wrap it around like this, and then we can fix it here with a pin. We can also hand stitch this part here, right along here, fix it with pins, or we can directly go to the sewing machine and sew it. I'm going to sew it with the sewing machine. Here, with the seam facing outwards, we sew across, but remember we have to turn it inside out when we're finished sewing. So I would say to leave a little bit of an allowance. Make sure like maybe your finger can go through. So I'm going to sew like up to here, like about 1.5 centimeters. So it's better to sew it too slack than too tight, because you can always go back to the sewing machine and tighten it, like make it sew it a little closer. So here I think I've done it a little bit too slack. So there again, I'm going to maybe get. So we turned this inside, turn this to the side. Turn it over, that is, like this. And everything's hidden, all the raw edges, everything, they're hidden. Now you can properly fix. Let's see if something is wrong with the lighting. Okay. Now you can properly fix the bow. Here we can just thread it here with twine or ribbon and hang it. And it can be easily, the tails can be easily manipulated. You can turn it to the other side here. Here is the seam but this you can always place at the back. And here's the bow, we've hung it. Now, if you wanted a larger bow, a longer bow, longer tails, you can use a longer piece of material. And now let's get on to the second bow. We're going to make this second bow. This material, it's 80 centimeters long and 29 height, okay? 29 from here vertically. This is a very thinner material. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to fold it in half like this. And I'm going to iron the fusible interfacing just on one side, not both, but just on one side. So what I've done is I've cut out more or less, because I have this fusible interfacing and it's all crinkly, and I had to sort of cut out the more or less the size of this material here. So what I did in cutting out the fusible interfacing, I sort of left like half a centimeter here, half a centimeter here, because you don't want it to, it becomes very, it has glue and you don't want it sticking on your ironing board. So I only want it on one side of the material. So I'm going to proceed to cut out now this interfacing. So I have cut out this panel. Now this is the fusible interfacing. If you notice, on one side it's sort of a shiny, and this is the part that has the glue. So this is the part that has to stick to the wrong side of your material. So I've cut this out more or less to the dimension of what I want it to stick on to, always leaving like a bit, half a centimeter from here, here, and here, so that it just doesn't stick on your ironing board or anywhere else. So I'm going to put it here on my material, and if you want to anchor this more to your material, you can also pin it in place to make sure that it doesn't move. Here I need to pull it over this way. Okay, it's more or less. It's not perfect. You can measure it out perfectly, but for demonstration purposes, I put it okay like this. The important thing is that the shinier side has to be towards the wrong side of the material. Now we can start to iron. So with the hot iron, you press, and already you see it started sticking. Then you go again to the other parts, and let's continue. I'm going to pull this here so you can see, and we press here. Okay. I'm just going to double check and show you what's going on to see. You need to know if it's sticking, yes or no. So I'm going to lift this, separate it a bit, and you see it's stuck. So I'm going to just iron a little bit here where it's not stuck, and then we'll continue. So you can also, just because I don't have enough fusible interfacing, you can also, if you want to, and you want it even stiffer, you can iron the whole thing or another panel right onto the other side. No problem. So what we're going to proceed to do now is we have this all on the wrong side. We need to stitch all along this side here. We leave this open here and we leave this one open here, but we need to stitch alongside about 1/2 centimeter seam allowance. So I'm going to do that and I'll see you back in a while. So now we've stitched all along. What we need to do now is we're going to turn it inside out. If by chance there's some of the fusible interfacing that doesn't stick, of course you iron again. So we turn out this inside out like this. And now that it's been turned inside out, what we're going to do is we're going to place the seam in the middle. You turn it so that the seam gets to be in the middle. And then what you do, you take it over to your ironing board and you iron this flat. Okay, flat. Now that you've ironed this flat, what we're going to do is that just keep this seam facing towards you, and what we do is we take these two raw edges here and we're going to sew them together. We're going to sew across. So I have sewn across, and here you have some raw edges. You can trim them if you want to, no problem. Now, the next thing you do is you turn it inside out where you do not have any seams. Okay, this is not a seam. This is this is a crease, not a seam. So what you can do to get rid of this, you go and you iron again. So we're going to iron this like that. This resulting seam, the vertical seam, because the horizontal seam that's hidden inside. This vertical seam, you keep this in the middle, because then when we bunch it up, this is going to be included. So you can keep this in the middle. And make sure you can measure, make sure it's even here and even here. Let's see, for measuring we can say this is about 19 here. Let's see, let's get it to be 19. Okay, no, not 19. So we shift it more towards the left. Let's see now, this is about, okay, this is really 19 here. Yeah? This is still 18 and a half. No, it's all, no, it's 19. Okay, we got it, 19 and 19. Steam, iron as flat as possible, because here we're going to be bunching up. Okay, we're going to create our bow. We're going to begin. what I do is I take some strong thread and in order to keep it to tie it up. So I'm going to use some of this and I'm just going to tie it up here in the middle. Then I go around and I'm going to tie it again. And I'm going to just make an extra knot here and I'm just going to cut it. Okay, so now we can put this aside. Now we want to make our tail. Now for the tail, you can cut out the same dimensions as like for the bow, because if you want to understand, preview how it's gonna look, you can pick up the bow and you can just crease the tail, crunch it up in the middle like this, and try to understand the length, if this is the length you want, or if you know how it's gonna look. So more or less that's fine. So here's what the bow, you can either leave it like this without ironing any fusible interfacing, or you can iron fusible interfacing and make it stiffer. You can do it on one side or both sides. So there again, you can leave it. You be the judge. It can be pretty like this and we can try it without fusible interfacing. So for the bow, we're going to proceed the way we did in the previous video with the bow with the continuous piece of material. So we're going to fold this in half like this, and we're going to iron this, iron it properly. Now make sure that the folded edge is right to the top. Make sure it's to the top. So when you're satisfied, what you do is you use some pins to pin. You want to sort of keep it stabilized, the material. So we're going to take a couple of pins here and pin it down. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to do where we measure here, and from here we draw a line and we're going to cut. Okay? So we're going to measure about, let's say, we can go measure 12, 13, let's put 10. We're going to 10 centimeters from here and 10 centimeters from this one too. Now with the ruler, we're going to draw a line like that, and another one here. Now we're going to cut. Here's one piece, and we're going to cut the other. And here's the other piece. Now, just like we did in the last video, we're going to pin all around and we're going to leave a center opening. And the center open is for turning this inside out. So we need to turn the tail inside out. And the center opening, you can measure it. Well, 6. This is thin material and we didn't put any interfacing, anything. So even a little 6 centimeters we can leave. What we do is we can mark off where we're going to leave the opening by crisscrossing some pins. So here, and then of course you pin the rest, because now we're going to take it to the sewing machine. We're going to sew from here to here, come up to the pin, here you stop, then you continue and you go all the way here around, because remember we need to keep this open. So I'll be right back. So it was sewn and we left the middle open, this part here, because we're going to turn it inside out. Another thing, oops, I think I'm going to need to take away the pins. Let's take away the pins first. Okay. Another thing you can do is always clip here, clip the tips here. If you want it as crisp as possible, you can do that, no problem. So let's turn it inside out. Okay, this. Okay. Now we're going to decide how we want to close here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the sewing machine and I'm going to stitch it all the way around. You can hand stitch the middle. You can use fabric glue. There are many things you can do as was seen in the last video. So I'm going to just do a stitching all the way around. But before I do that, I'm going to iron it flat. So now it's ironed, it's all flat, and I did stitch it all along, all around. So I closed up the middle. Now we can understand here, when we cinch it in the middle, and we're going to attach it to our bow. So what we can do, we find the middle of this by just folding it in half. This is the middle. We can even iron it so it keeps that crease. Then what we do is we can take, so we're going to tie this, the tail to the bow, and we're going to use a strong thread to do it. Now everything's tied up and we need to just measure here the middle, because we're going to put the flap that's going to cover the raw edges, the thread. So this is about 11-12 centimeters, and maybe the width can be about 3 or 4 centimeters, even 4 centimeters, because then we have to allow for the seam allowance. So it's going to be 11 by 8 centimeters, because we always double the material. Okay, 11 by 8 centimeters. So I ended up measuring 15 by 8 centimeters. So we're going to fold it in this way, and we're only going to sew lengthwise here, from here to here. So when you're finished sewing, you just turn it inside out like this. Keep the seam in the middle facing you. And what you do is you take this, you can iron it flat, okay, it would be the best thing. You take your bow, and I said 15 by 8 because when you go around here, you need enough space to sew, because what you do is you take it to the sewing machine and you sew. You can leave like a centimeter here because you really will need to turn it inside out. You sew right across. So this is a thinner material, so it's not going to give you many problems. And you sew here, and it's at the end, the resulting dimension would be about 11 by 8 centimeters. So I'm going to sew right across here, and then I'm going to show you how I turn it inside out. So it was sewn across here, and what I'm going to do is just clip this part, this excessive, and I'm going to turn it inside out. When you turn it inside out, you don't see any seams or rough edges. And we cover up the threads. Okay. Let's pull this out a little better. Here there's extra, I can cut this thread that's peeking out. This seam here can be placed at the back, or it could be placed even at the top here, because then we're going to be hanging this bow. So there you can decide what you want to do with it. You need to pull it out a little better because it's not pulled out really well. Okay. Okay, now it's better, pulled out better. So there you have it. You have this. It's a smaller dimension. It's a little floppier because of just one sheet of fusible interfacing was used. Now we're going to go hang it, and we're going to see how it looks. Well, this is it hung here, and thanks for watching. Feel free to message me with any questions, and because you can really be very creative, and you can do this in a variety of ways. Anyway, have a nice crafting day.